So today we're going to go over some factoring. This is a big thing for Algebra 2 as we move through the year, being able to factor. And keep it all in mind that really when we're talking about factoring, okay, that when we say factor, all this really means is to write as a product. Okay, so as multiplication. So when you're factoring something, we're really just talking about writing as a product. So we've done this before. We factored something like 15. 15 we could factor into 3 times 5. So that's what we're talking about when we say factor. Right? So think factoring, writing as a product, taking something, in this case a number, and writing as multiplication. Okay. Let's do a little bit of review here real quick. Okay, before we factor, let's go over some multiplying. First one is something like this. Okay, distributing. So just keep in mind when we distribute, we're multiplying everything inside each term. Right, there's a term and term. Right, each term inside by what's outside. So in this case, 2x plus 6. So distributing there, if we had something like, say, -3, and now we're distributing into this quadratic here. So keep in mind we're distributing a -3, so pay attention to your signs. -3 times x squared. -3 times -2x becomes plus 6x. And -3 times +4 becomes minus 12. So distributing there, quick review of that. That should be familiar. We've done that before. Okay, so the first thing we'll look at in terms of factoring is kind of the opposite of here. This 2 is going inside this parenthesis by multiplying. Okay, and then we see that here we have that factor of 2. This is 2 times x, and plus right here is this 2 times 3. Here we distributed the -3. We multiplied going in. All right, so here we have -3 times x squared plus -3 times the 2x. All right. And then we have the -3 here times the 4. Okay, so there's this -3 distributed through. Okay, so keep that in mind. We'll go over here. Factoring a common monomial. All right, so factoring a common monomial. So when I say factor common monomial, let's look at something like this. Okay, we say factor, think we're trying to write this 2x plus 10, right? Collectively, this would be called a binomial, 2 terms. All right, so we want to factor this. When we're talking about monomial, we're talking about what's in common here. What's a common factor with 2x and of 10? So in other words, what would divide evenly into 2x and the 10? Okay, and you should be able to easily identify that as a 2. So what we're going to do is write down 2. This is my common monomial. All right. And then what do I have left is what? Well, 2x divided by the 2 becomes x, and 10 divided by 2 becomes plus 5. Okay, so this would be factoring out that common monomial. So that would be 2x plus 10 factored in that case. Okay, so notice it's the reverse of distributing. If I started here, I could distribute the 2 into here. I could distribute the 2 into here. All right, and now we'll get up here what I start with. But now we're kind of working backwards. All right, so we're taking out this right here. This 2 is that common monomial. Okay, so take out the 2 there. So got another one here. Let's go with now another example. All right, 2x squared plus 6x plus 8. So now we're going to be factoring out a common monomial. All right, factor out our common monomial. from this quadratic. So you just go and say, what are factors of 2x squared? What's in common of factors of 6x, and what's a common factor of 8? All right, so in other words, what divides evenly into 2x squared, 6x, and 8? Okay, so in this case here, you should pretty easily identify that a 2 will come out again. So there's a common factor of 2. What's left? Well, I divide 2x squared by 2, I get x squared. Divide 6x by 2, plus 3x. Divide 8 by 2, plus 4. Okay, so then that would be factoring out my common monomial. So right now, that's the first stage of what we're doing here. You can always check easily if you factored correctly by multiplying back together what you have. So if I distribute the 2 back, do I get what I started with here? All right, and of course the answer would be there, yes. All right, so there's that one. Let's look at this one here. Let's do a negative 3x squared minus 12x and plus 15. Okay, so what's in common here? So what's in common with negative 3x squared, negative 12x, and 15? What's a common factor? Well, 3 and 1. This has 12 has factors of 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. This is factors of 3, 5, and 15. So what's in common? Well, clearly a 3. Okay, so 3 is in common. And the other thing I want us to get used to is the x squared term, right? There's this negative in front. We're also going to factor out that negative, which is really factoring out a negative 1, but combine that with the 3. So in other words, we're factoring out not 3, but we're going to factor out a negative 3. Okay, so get used to taking this negative out. It's going to make things that we're going to do easier. So now, what happens? What do I have left? Well, what's negative 3x squared divided by negative 3? Right, you're factoring out when you put that number inside, right? When we take this 2 and we go from the outside in, distributing, we're multiplying, which means if we take from up here the 2 out, we got to be dividing it out, right? So here, divide negative 3x squared by negative 3, you just get 1 x squared. Keep in mind your signs. Negative 12x, negative 12 divided by negative 3. Negative divided by negative is going to be positive. And now 12 divided by 3, 4x. And then positive 15 divided by a negative 3. Positive 15 divided by a negative 3 is going to be minus 5. Okay, so then that would be factoring out my monomial. Okay, again, the monomial right here. Okay, that's your monomial. All right, you might also think of that as your greatest common factor, right? What's the greatest common factor of negative 3, 12, and 15? It'd be 3. Okay, so there's the monomial part. Now, let's go back over here. Quick little review of multiplying first, right? So if we had x plus 2 times x plus 3, we're going to multiply that together, right? A binomial times a binomial. All we're going to do is distribute multiple times. So we get x times x here. Okay, x times x, so that would equal x squared. Then we take x times 3 over here. X times positive 3 would be plus 3x. And we're done distributing that x. Now we have a positive 2 we have to distribute. So positive 2 times x would be plus 2x. And then a positive 2 times a positive 3 would be plus 6. And then here we have like terms we can combine. So when we multiply x plus 2 times x plus 3, we get x squared plus 5x plus 6. Okay, so that's multiplying there. Binomial times a binomial. All right, let's do one more of those. Let's go with x plus 4 times x minus 5. Okay, so if we do that, same thing, x times x squared, then x times negative 5 minus 5x. Now we got to distribute the positive 4. So positive 4 times x plus 4x, and positive 4 times negative 5 minus 20. Make sure positive times a negative. Simplify, combine our like terms, we get x squared, negative 5x plus 4x minus x, and then minus 20. Okay, and then there, that would be multiplying x plus 4 times x minus 5. All right, so there's multiplying. What we're going to now do is we're going to work in reverse. So just like before, we distributed the 2, and we distribute going into parentheses, and then we factored out the monomial. That's working backwards, taking it out, writing as a product. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start with this end result and find out what 2 binomials or what terms, what kind of monomial or binomial multiply to be this quadratic here. Okay, so here we're going to go factoring. Okay, quadratic. And we're going to say a equals 1. And by a equals 1, keep in mind we have our standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c. Well, if a is 1, then that means now my first term is really just going to look like x squared. Okay, so factoring when it looks like that. Okay, so here let's do, best way to do this is look at some examples, talk about some things that make it pretty straightforward. So pay attention, take some notes, pause the video as you're watching it to write some important stuff down I'm going to write down. Okay, so here we're going to be factoring. So keep in mind we're factor. Factor means to write as a product. Factor. Okay, and the first one we're going to do is this. X squared plus 5x plus 6. So factor this. So in other words, we can think of a factor tree, right? If I take this whole quadratic, I'm thinking what will multiply to be this, all right? Now, we don't necessarily have to write this down. I don't necessarily want you writing down the factor tree, but it's just like factoring numbers. Kind of have a factor tree here. So now, where's this x squared come from? Well, that's going to come from taking the first term here, like we just did in the previous page, and multiplying. So when I distribute this x times x, that gives me x squared. So now, ready? Here's the process that's going to make this pretty straightforward here in terms of finding out what goes in these other places, okay? So the first one is I got to look at my constant, right? This number at the end, okay, without the variable is called your constant, okay? So we're going to look at that constant and say factors of 6. So in other words, what numbers multiply to be 6, okay? Well, 1 and 6 and 3 and 2, okay? So factors of 6, okay? Then you read right to left. So you factors of 6, then you look at this sign right here. Plus. So read that as add. So factors of 6 that add, okay, factors of 6 that add to this number right here, 5. Okay, so as you read right to left, just read right to left and say to yourself, factors of 6, right? Factors, what do you multiply to get 6? Well, 6 times 1 and 3 times 2. Factors of 6 that add, and we're saying add because of this right here, add to, in this case, in this 5. Okay, and we're saying 5 because of the number here. Okay, so it should be pretty obvious now. Well, 6 and 1 are 3 and 2. Well, it's going to be 3 and 2. So we throw the 3 in here, throw the 2 in here, 3 and 2. All right, now we look here. Plus, right, means same signs. All right, plus means the same sign. So in other words, the sign in here, plus or minus, and the sign in here, plus or minus, are going to be the same. When you see a plus at the end, I have to have the same sign because to get a positive 6, when I multiply 3 times 2, either it's to be positive 3 times positive 2 or negative 3 times negative 2. So the plus there means the same sign. Well, how do you know what sign to put in? You look right here. Whatever sign's there is going to be what goes in here. So this tells me, this plus 6 tells me same sign. And then you look here, this is what goes inside. So plus here, plus here. And then, in this case, we're done. We have factored x squared plus 5x plus 6. What do you multiply to get x squared plus 5x plus 6? X plus 3 times x plus 2. All right, so just to review this one, we got a couple more we're going to do. Start right to left, say factors of 6. What do you multiply to get 6? That add to 5. Well, 3 and 2. You look here. Signs, plus means signs are the same. So plus means signs are the same. Okay, now not this plus, with the constant. Plus here, signs are the same as whatever the sign is here. All right, whatever that sign is going to be what goes inside. All right, let's look at another one. We're going to factor, right? Same thing, we're just all factoring these. Okay, we're going to factor x squared minus 7x plus 12. Okay, so does this factor? Now, some might not factor. It's like being prime. Okay, so factor, well, if it factors, we're thinking, all right, binomial times binomial. What goes in front? Well, we got x squared, so x and x. X times x is going to give me my x squared. And now we start here. We say factors of 12 that add to 7. Okay, so factors of 12 that add to 7. Factors of 12 to add to 7. Well, 12 and 1, but 12 and 1 don't add to 7. 2 and 6, 2 plus 6, 8. 3 and 4, yep, that works. So 3 times 4 is 12, and 3 plus 4 is 7. So 3 goes in here, 4 goes in here. Now we look at that sign right there. Plus tells me the signs inside are going to be the same. Okay, plus in there tells me the signs are going to be the same. Same as what? Whatever this sign is. Okay, the 7x here. So that tells me that in here, minus, minus, and you're done. Okay, you're done. It's kind of that easy. You could always check your answer. You should always be able to check your answer easily if you just multiply back together. X times x, x squared. X times negative 4, negative 4x. Okay, we'd have negative 4x there. If I distribute negative 3 times x, I get minus 3x. If I combine these, what do I get? Negative 7x. Good. And then negative 3 times negative 4, positive 12. Check my answer that way. Just always multiplying back together. Okay, so that's those two scenarios where we have a plus at the end, plus 12, plus constant, signs are the same. You look here. All right, now the other scenario, right, is when we have something like this. So we're still factoring. So now let's factor this one. X squared plus 2x minus 8. All right, very, very similar. Okay, just a little difference here. Still going to have x and x here. But now, we still start here and say factors of 8. So we're still thinking factors of 8. But now we say that subtract to 2. Okay, so now in this one, we're saying factors of 8 that subtract to 2. So you just read right to left, say factors of 8. What do you multiply to get 8? And subtract to get 2. Okay? So all we're doing there. So then you say, well, what do I multiply to get 8? Well, 8 and 1, but 8 minus 1 is 7. So no good. 4 times 2. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 minus 2 is 2. So then I throw a 4 in here, throw in 2. And it would not matter. Or, right, maybe you threw and put the 2 in here and the 4 in here. We'll do both of these. You can see that it doesn't matter. Throw either one. Now, here's where it's a little different. First difference is that you see I read subtract. Now, what does this sign tell me? Right, when that's a minus, your constant, minus 8, that means I got to take a 4 times 2 and I got to get a negative. Well, that means one of these has to be positive and one has to be negative. Okay, so the minus sign, when you have a minus sign, that's going to mean different signs. Okay, that's going to mean you're going to have different signs. You got a plus here, minus here, or minus here, plus here. Okay, so different signs. So you see the minus, different signs. Plus, same sign. Okay, so you got here, different signs. Okay, now, how do you know what goes in where? Well, right, different signs. Now you look here. Okay, so now you look here. That's going to goes, that sign goes with the bigger number. Okay, goes with the bigger number. All right, goes with the bigger number. So now you look down here, you say 4 and 2, what's bigger? Well, 4. So plus here, minus here. And you can see down here, that would just mean the plus goes here and the minus goes here. All right, so plus here, that goes with a bigger number. Since the signs have to be different, then that would have to be a minus. Okay, so that's the difference here. Kind of start the same way. Factors of 8 that subtract to 2. Put them in there. Then you got to say, all right, what's this mean? Well, if it's a minus here with your constant, signs are different. Okay. So here we have, then we're done with this one. Either that one or that one, they're the same. Okay, so there's that first one. Now let's go over to next one. All right, we'll do another one of those. We got, let's go with x squared. All right, so still factoring. X squared minus 5x minus 14. We're going to factor this one. So if this one factors, we got x here, we got x here. Now you say factors of 14. So what do you multiply to be 14? 14 times 1, 7 times 2, right? Factors of 14 that subtract to 5. So what do you multiply to get 14 and subtract to get 5? Again, you look at these two, clearly 2 and 7 work. Now, how do we know what sign's going here? You look here. What's the sign? Sign is negative. So if the sign's negative, that means the signs are different. Negative, different signs. Now, where does the signs go? Look here. That's the sign that's going with the bigger number. 7 is bigger. Different sign there. All right, so minus goes with the 7. That means plus goes with the 2. And you're done. You can always check it by multiplying back together. All right, if we take x times x, right, x times x, x squared. X times negative 7 minus 7x. 2 times x plus 2x. And 2 times negative 7, negative 14. And if you look here, you're going to have negative 7x plus 2x, negative 5x minus 14x squared. All checks out. Okay, so that's the way you check. All right, you just multiply it back together. So there's really here an easy way to check your answer. It's not always going to be the case this year at all. That you have to do it right. It's going to be hard to check on here. It's pretty easy. So there it is, factored. X squared minus 5x minus 14 factors into the quantity of x plus 2 times the quantity of x minus 7. Factor, it's a product there, right? Multiplication. So that's factoring, right? It's the first step in factoring quadratics. We got to make sure we can do this well, do this efficiently, kind of do this quickly. It is largely dependent also upon you being able to know some arithmetic pretty easily. What do you multiply to get 14? What do you multiply to get 28? Okay, you got to think of those numbers in arithmetic in terms of adding or subtracting to this middle number. Okay, so check this out. We're going to have some problems based on this. We got to get this done relatively quickly, and then add on to this. We're going to have a nice process that when the number in front of x squared is not a 1, it becomes a little more complicated. But what we're going to do is have a process, kind of a recipe, a way to boil it down to one of these kind of 4 scenarios. Okay, so watch this. If you have any questions, please make sure to let me know.